Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. FacepalmAmerica.com is where you can get more information about the show. Listen to past episodes. Connect with us on social media. If you want to call or message us, you can do that at 202-656-6271. And please do. I mean, you could message us anytime. You can call us anytime. I might not pick up, but we will get back to you, and we could get your actual voice on the show if that is something that you want to do. Many of you know that in the past, I worked in the right-wing media. I spent a lot of time as someone who had a personal background in that kind of politics growing up and as a younger person, and then basically evolved through college and early adulthood, but then took a job in the right-wing media, and I sort of knew the drill. I knew how to talk the talk, and I knew what the scene was about at that time for the most part. And so it was fascinating as someone who had a very different political perspective, seeing it from the inside. And so I'm always fascinated by the stories of people who work inside that particular beast and live to tell the tale, psychologically speaking. And we have one of those folks with us today. Tina Nguyen is a national correspondent for Puck, covering the world of Donald Trump and the American right. Previously, she was a White House reporter for Politico, a staff reporter for Vanity Fair Hive, and an editor at Mediaite. And she was, for long, very much involved in part of the right-wing world, the MAGA/proto-MAGA world. And her book is The MAGA Diaries, My Surreal Adventures Inside the Right Wing and How I Got Out. Tina, welcome to Facepalm America. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I didn't know much of your background until you started talking about it too. So I have the feeling that when we're talking about this, I'm going to be like, oh my God, you get it. You get it. You get what I'm trying to say. Oh, this is amazing.
I hope so. Assuming that I haven't been so, thoroughly deprogrammed at this point, it seems because I stopped working at the place that I worked at about 10 years ago now. And it seems to me that looking from the outside, that it has become like so much more intense and so much like worse and so much like more into cloud cuckoo land than even it was then. And it was pretty bad at the time. I mean, I have picked up the phone for President Donald Trump while he was on hold waiting for a talk show host and exchanged words, in the years leading up to his first presidential run. So there was that kind of thing going on as that particular, bud of evil was beginning to blossom, so to speak. It's just, it's fascinating. And I'm wondering, like, for me, this is how it was. I grew up strangely in a very conservative family in a very liberal area in Marin County, California, just north of San Francisco, one of the most liberal parts of the country, and yet probably one of the most conservative families that certainly in that area. Not particularly Christian or anything like that, but very right wing. And so I went from that, and I went to college at UC Santa Cruz, where I was a banana slug. I got a little bit of experience in the real world. I learned a few things. I experienced things in early adulthood, what it was like to, actually, raise kids and have a family and how the real world worked. And I was pretty early on not really a conservative anymore in most fundamental respects. And yet, because of the background that I had, I got a job which I needed to take, working for a right-wing talk radio network. And so it was just amazing for me to see that. I'm wondering, what was your progression? What was your evolution within that sphere? How did it work for you?
So the weird thing that people always scratch their heads about when they look at a very cursory summary of my background, which is Vietnamese American, female, first generation, parents were affiliated with Harvard in like fairly academic senses, went to a liberal prep high school. How did you get to the Daily Caller? What the hell do you know about the MAGA movement? Why? And this is something that's completely undercovered when you talk about the conservative movement. How much of it is built on recruitment at a young age, delivering opportunities to young people who are trying to get their foot in the door, and their ability to identify people who have like the slightest inclination towards their beliefs, and then cultivating it over time to the point that decades down the road, they've got someone in their pocket who's like, say, Mitch McConnell, who did come out of these programs long time ago. When he was a college student, he was part of this group called the Leadership Institute, instituted by this guy named Morton Blackwell, who in the 60s and 70s was like, hey, what if we found some college students and raised them to be good conservative leaders? And then that idea metastasized into a giant $100 million industry, probably billions of dollars if you think about it.
Yeah.
But to go back to me, I found that just as appealing. And the thing is, my reason for going into it was, one, I wanted to be a journalist, and there are these programs opening up for liberty-minded journalists who wanted a career in the news industry. That is literally what it was called.
Wow.
And two, I was obsessed with the American founding. Like, I loved 1776, the musical. I was obsessed with reading about like John Adams and
George
Washington.
I get that. I like history, the way it is taught in America was like a totally, I guess, in retrospect, really sucked me in. My dad was a Civil War buff who in the early 1960s lived in the D.C. area, was actually a page in the U.S. Senate, and went to all the reenactments of all of the battles, the 100th anniversary battles. And so I was sucked into American history in a big way, things around the Revolution and the Civil War and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, man. And like my prep school had been around for like 200 years. You felt like you were literally living in history. Yeah. Every school trip was like to Plymouth Plantation, the Freedom Trail. You got to go see where Paul Revere lived. You got to go see the Battle of Bunker Hill and Lexington. And John Adams's mansion was actually, his house and his estate was actually on the street from where I grew up. So like, when you have parents who don't really talk about their own history because it got like napalmed into oblivion.
Yeah.
And you see this building that's been around for 200 years that represents things like freedom and liberty and fighting for what's right. You just kind of go, ooh, I want to do that. And when I was I was looking at colleges, I was dating this boy at the time who I end up talking a little bit in the book. He goes through a crazy journey. But he ends up going to Claremont McKenna. And one of the reasons I follow him there is literally there's a research institute there called the Salvatore Center for the Study of Individual Freedom in the Modern World. And it's
so many awesome euphemisms that we've gone through already.
Yeah, and it's connected to this other institute called Claremont Institute, and their motto is preserving the ideas of the American founding. Like, take what kind of nerd I am, take how little money I have. Yeah. All of a sudden, this Founding Fathers Obsessed Institute is like, hey, we got money. Do you want to build a career here? Of course I'm going to be like, yes, this is amazing. Let's go. Totally. Let's go. Let me go to this required seminar for my journalism internship called Journalism in the Free Society. Yeah. I'm just, what is this? Who the hell are the Koch brothers? Why are they funding this? I don't care. Internship.
That's
how they get you.
You got to do a job like doing history. like your favorite thing. And so like that's a pretty cool sounding thing on the surface of it. And as I had worked for, I had to move out of the Bay Area because I lost a job from a layoff in the first internet bubble, and I was looking for a job in Oregon, and all of a sudden there was a radio network that was hiring, and I had a young family, and I needed a job, and this was something that I knew how to do because I had been in radio, and I knew what the mindset was. So like there was money there. And so it's a little bit different, but I totally get where you came from. So you what did you see when you were there? Because by that time I was already a real lefty. But what did you see once you got on the inside and got in deeper? What did you see as time progressed for you?
So the more I stayed in this world, the more overt the opportunities for career development became, and the promise of you will have a high-profile, high-flying career. We will be here to cultivate you. So as soon as I left that program, I did my internship over the summer. It was perfectly fine. And then this email lands in my inbox in September that says, hello, you've been selected for the exclusive Institute for Humane Studies mentorship program. We've identified you as one of the most promising young people in the cohort of
one of the most humane people in America.
Oh yeah, it's the program's called the Institute for Humane Studies. Back in the day, they had a journalism program. Right. Primarily, they were cultivating academics and scholars, think tank guys, basically, to sit in a room and read Edmund Burke all day.
God help you.
But or free market economics. It's at George Mason. But over time, they started teaching things that you don't normally get in school unless you go to, say, like a high profile journalism school. Things like, here's how you write a resume. Here are some workshops at the Leadership Institute for going on television. Here's how to pitch a story. Here's how to, here are a whole bunch of internships. Here are people I could literally connect you to get these scholarships and these internships. And here's what you have to say to him. Such as there was one where they were if you want to talk to these people at the Collegiate Network, they're interested in people who have a passion for libertarianism and journalism as well. But you also have to have the libertarian part. Right. And I'm just kind of nodding and going along with this because I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't really know if I can get a job at the New York Times. That sounds impossible. Yeah. So the further in you go, the more you realize, wait, I have actual access to these high profile people who will take time out of their day to help me out. And there's one point I was hanging out with this guy and we did a dumb little music video. And for some reason, he knew Grover Norquist, who is one of the top Republican lobbyists in the country, who holds a meeting every Wednesday at the top of his in this building in Washington, D.C. And we are dumb children. We are idiot babies. And somehow he's like, hey, you're interesting. Come into the meeting. And people just start giving us their business cards. Yeah. Going, hey, you're kind of promising. Let's keep in touch. This sounds great. And it's this it's so prominent and powerful. And you're just kind of going, yeah, this is great. This is cool. I'm totally
being
down
able
to
hear, hang out with people that you've heard about in the news is kind of intoxicating, isn't it? Even if they're kind of in right wing world, it's still, you've heard about them, and it's kind of cool. I'm talking to this person. I'm shaking their hand. I'm getting their card. It's wow. You know?
And the funny thing is that at their age, people prominent conservatives and Republicans were doing that for them too. So. Yeah. In a way, for them, it's we're paying this forward to bring this new generation in. You have to understand the conservative movement is decades old at this point, 50, 60 years old. It is a full, it started off as